Hag Sameach, everyone. Welcome back for the second night of Hanukkah. As we continue with our lighting and our stories. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu vayamim ahem v'azman hazeh. Put that over here. This is, again, Isaac Bashevis Singer, The Power of Light. There is no moon on the first night of Hanukkah, but that night, in the light from the stars, the snow sparkled as if it were full of diamonds. Reb Barish placed his Chanukah on the window according to the law, poured oil into the container, put a wick into it, and made the customary benedictions, then sat by the open clay stove. Even though most of the children stayed at home on Hanukkah evenings, a few boys came to the study house to learn with Reb Barish's stories. He was a well-known storyteller. While he told stories, he roasted potatoes on the glowing coals. He was saying, "Nowadays, when snow falls and there is a frost, people call it winter. In comparison to the winters of my time, the winters of today are nothing. It used to be so cold the oak trees burst in the forest. The snow was up on the rooftop. Bevies of hungry wolves came into the village at night, and people shuddered in bed from their howling. The horses neighed in the stables and tried to break the doors open from fear, and the dogs barked like mad. Bilgeray was still a tiny place to them. There a pasture, where Bagno Street is today. The winter I'm going to tell you about was the worst of them all. The days were almost as dark as night. The clouds were red as lead. A woman would come out of her kitchen with the slop pail, and the water turned to ice before she could empty it. Now hear something. That year, the men blessed the Hanukkah lights on the first night as they did every year. But suddenly a wind came from nowhere and extinguished them. It happened in every house at the same time. The lights were kindled a second time, but again they were extinguished. In those times there was an abundance of wood to keep the houses warm. To keep the wind out, cracks in the windows were plugged up with cotton and straw. So how did the wind get in? And why should it happen in every house at the same time? People went to the rabbi to ask his advice, and the rabbi's decision was to continue to rekindle the lights. Some pious men kept trying until the rooster crowed, and this happened on the first night of Hanukkah. But it happened on the second night as well. There were non-believers who contended that the whole thing was just a natural occurrence, but most of the people believed that there was some mysterious power behind it. A fear came over the town. Old women said that it was an omen of war or an epidemic. Fathers and grandfathers were so disturbed that they forgot to give Hanukkah money to the little children, who then were unable to play dreidel. The women didn't fry their pancakes as they had in former years. It went on like this until the seventh night, and then, after everyone was asleep, the rabbi was sitting in his chamber studying Talmud when he heard a knock on the door. It was the rabbi's custom to go to sleep early in the evening and get up after midnight to study. When the rabbi heard the knocking on the door, he got up and opened it. An old woman stood outside, and the rabbi invited her to come in. She sat down and told the rabbi that last year before Hanukkah, her little granddaughter had died. Altella was her name. She had first gotten sick in the summer, and no doctor could help her. After the high holidays, Altella realized that her end was near, and she said, "Grandma, I know that I'm going to die, but I wish to live until Hanukkah, when Grandpa gives me Hanukkah money and I can play dreidel with the girls." Everybody prayed for the girl's recovery, but it so happened that she died just a day before Hanukkah. For a whole year after her death, her grandparents never saw her in their dreams, but this night, the grandmother had seen her in her dreams 3 times in a row. She came to her and said that because the people of the town had not prayed ardently enough for her to see the first Hanukkah candle, she had died angry, and she was the one extinguishing the Hanukkah lights in every house. The old women said that after the first dream, she wakened her husband and told him, but he said it was because she brooded so much about her grandchild. The second time, the grandmother asked what the town people could do to bring peace to her soul. The girl began to answer, but the old woman woke up suddenly. Only in the third dream did the girl speak clearly, saying it was her wish that on the last night of Hanukkah, all the people of Belgorod, together with the rabbi and elders, should come to her grave and light the Hanukkah candles there. They should bring the children with them, eat pancakes, and play dreidel on the frozen snow. When the rabbi heard these words, he began to tremble. "It's my fault," he said. "I didn't pray hard enough." He told the old woman to wait, poured some tea for her, and looked in the book to see if what the child asked was in accordance with the law. He couldn't find anything similar, so he granted that the wish of the grieved spirit should be granted. And he told the old woman that though it was a cold and windy night, and there was little chance for the lights to burn outdoors, that they would go and try to appease her spirit. Early in the morning, when the beadle came to the rabbi, he asked him to take his wooden hammer and go from house to house, knock on shutters, and tell the people what they must do. Even though Hanukkah is a holiday, the rabbi had ordered the older people to fast until noon and ask forgiveness for the girl's sacred soul. All day long, a fierce wind blew. Chimneys were blown off the roofs. The sky was overcast with dark clouds. Not only the unbelievers, but even some of the God-fearing men doubted that the lights could stay lit even outdoors in this storm. The town's healer, Nissen, had trimmed his beard and come to the synagogue only on the Sabbath, called the old woman a liar, and warned that the little ones would catch cold out in the graveyard. The blizzard seemed to become wilder from minute to minute, but suddenly, while the people were reciting the evening prayers, a change took place. The sky cleared, the wind subsided, and warm breezes started to waft through the fields and forests. It was already the beginning of the month of Tevet, and a new moon was seen with myriad of stars in the sky. Some of the unbelievers were so stunned they couldn't utter a word. Nisan the healer promised the rabbi that scissors would never again touch his beard, and he would pray every day of the week, not just Shabbat. Not only older children, but younger ones too were taken to the graveyard. Lights were kindled, blessings recited, the women served pancakes with jam that they had prepared, and the children played dreidel on the frozen snow. A golden light shone over the little girl's grave, a sign that her soul enjoyed the Hanukkah celebration. Never before or after did the graveyard seem so festive as on the 8th night of Hanukkah. Even the non-Jews heard of the miracle and acknowledged that God had not forsaken his people. The next day, Mendel the scribe wrote down the whole event in parchment in the community book, but the book was burned years later in the time of the first fire. "When did this happen?" one of the children asked. Reb Barish clutched his beard, which had turned from red to white and finally yellow because of the snuff that he used, and pondered for a while. "Not less than 80 years ago. You remember it so clearly?" "Yes," he said. as if a miracle took place yesterday. Hag Sameach, happy Hanukkah. I'll see you tomorrow for the third light.